Yo, Food Service Power Plant Network. Hello, friends. It's Monday night. We are here for what will be inevitably one of the most probably informative and authentic nights of your week. I certainly hope. We've got Marty Monnat joining us. Marty has an unbelievable background and history in our industry, doing a whole bunch of different roles on a manufacturer side, on the dealer side, running big companies. Now he's on a private equity board and working on the board with Steelite, et cetera. And just such cool background that we're going to get to pick his brain, and we're going to get to talk life. We're going to talk about challenge. We'll talk about where he sees the industry going, et cetera. It will be awesome. And tonight we have the K-12 Power Plant Network joining us. If you are, as my friend Shannon Solomon says, a lunch lady or a lunch lad, welcome. It is great. We're glad to be with you. As always, a couple of thoughts before we go get Marty. First, thanks to Lisa at the front desk at the Homewood Suites. I am in Utah right now. She hooked me up with this awesome room and just made it so that printed some stuff. So I was ready and dialed in, and unbelievable service brought in this little gift bag of waters in Swedish fish, which I didn't ask for, but I love it. She's like unbelievable on top of it. Lisa, you rock. Also, I would encourage you, grab a notepad and pen. Tonight, inevitably, Marty's going to share stories from his life, his experience. He's super educated, super experienced, and he's got things inevitably that we need, that you need in your story to help overcome some challenge or something that you might be working through that he's done. These are always nuggets of wisdom. Remember, the whole purpose of these conversations is that success leaves clues. And that's why we talk to industry leaders. There's clues in their story and their life and the risks they were willing to take that you might need in your story. And so grab a notepad. Also, you are welcome to make comments, give encouragement, or ask questions. In fact, look who's in the house. Boom. Zena Dater is in the house out of Oklahoma. Zena, what's up, friend? Marty is the best. I freaking love it. Marty and I just got to know each other recently because Danny, his son, is works with CalMill. Who's my CalMill rep down in Texas and Oklahoma, and Danny's team, the Preferred Source team. So we got to become friends, and that's how I got connected with Marty. And my dad knew Marty back in the day. It's fun how it all works together. So if you want, you're welcome to ask questions. If you want us to see your name the way we see Zena's, then go to StreamYard/Facebook, and we'll be able to see who you are. Otherwise, I will do my best to find you on my phone. I'm going to go into my phone right now. I am not texting my wife while this is going on. I'm simply, if I can't see your name on here, we're going to go in here and see you. So boom, give me 1 second and we're live. There we go. Love it. Everyone, we're glad you're here. It should be a great hour. Oh, who else is here? David Maxwell's in the house. Looking forward to the talk. David, we are glad you're here. You are a total power plant. Both of you are. Let's go find him. Marty Monnat. Hey, brother. How are you?
Good. That was quite a build-up. It makes it sound like the end of it, I couldn't hold a job very long, you know?
Hey, people can make their own conclusions. I just state the facts, Marty.
Yeah.
Who's this? Someone, I'm really glad you're here. This is, hold on here. I'm going to try to get in and see the comments. Boom. For some reason, it froze on my phone. That doesn't mean it's frozen live. I think we're good to go. Okay. So, Marty, listen, we're grateful you're here. You've had a really cool career. You're still having a really cool career. Tell us kind of what are you doing now, and how did you get to where you are now? What's your food service story?
So it's easier if I start at the beginning because I lose my place if I don't. I like thousands of other people, I started in this business as a kid, working in a hotel in high school, was close enough to home that I could walk to work. Started as a bar porter back when you could still wash glasses by hand. Learned to tend bar just by watching, but through high school, I worked there, did a number of different things, worked in the kitchen, got a pretty well-rounded exposure to it, and probably focused a lot more on work than I should have and not at school. And I was anxious to get out just as quick as I could. So I actually had enlisted in the Marine Corps on delayed enlistment. And back then, the draft was still a real thing, although Vietnam was trailing off and getting down the end. But the Marine Corps turned out to be a great experience for me. And I did something totally unlike what we did. I wound up working in the intelligence community, and but I did that, and it taught me a lot about myself and the things that I could do if I applied myself, and got out, went back to work in a hotel that I was working in because the economy was pretty soft at the time. My wife and I got married about 4 or 5 months after I got out. Started going to school at night, working on my degree. Went to work not long after that for Club Corp, who a lot of people know, Dallas-based company, as a purchasing agent in the Metropolitan Club of Chicago. Worked for really great people. I mean, my years at Club Corp were a great experience. Taught me about just about the whole service and quality and commitment, and the whole strategy they had for growing membership. But kind of took a career change. A lot of people out there I know, John Bates, I think, is on those. A guy I'm going to mention, Foster Sullivan, who was just a giant on the manufacturing side, convinced me that I needed to be doing something other than working in corporate America. And I went to work for Rigo China is here in Dallas, primarily in national accounts, which through the years led to the Oneida acquisition of Rigo. Wound up as the vice president of sales at Oneida. And then in around 2003, I was recruited by a private equity company that I didn't know a lot about, didn't know anything about them, and knew very little about private equity, to become the CEO of a company here in Dallas, ISI Commercial Refrigeration. We grew that business, had a successful sale, which is the key thing you want to have happen if you're managing a private equity company. Selling the business is a good thing, which always takes me a while to convince people, but we successfully sold that business to Strategic, or the owners of Strategic. About a year later, I was named the CEO of Strategic, and then for about the next 8 years, grew that business. We merged with Trimark in 2013, and from 2013 until the end of February 2020, I was the Executive Vice President of the Southern Region, which comprised essentially the Strategic Equipment Supply Company, and then a couple other Trimark companies, Foodcraft primarily in North Carolina, and the original Trimark South in Atlanta. We pulled them up. So great experience, great time, great people. Long roundabout way of how I wound up here. I had told Jerry Hyman that 2020 was the year I was going to retire, quote unquote. The folks at Arbor, who I mentioned before, I stayed in touch with through the years, managing partner called me and said, "You ever heard of a company called Steelite?" Which I laughed at because I have known John Miles and a number of the folks in his team I'd worked with at Oneida and Rigo. And anyway, Greg Purcell told me that we're going to buy Steelite, and we want you to be the operating partner. I said, "Well, if that happens, I'll be available because I'm going to, quote, retire." It's not really the same as retiring. It's not the pace of work that you typically, I mean, even without the pandemic, I wouldn't be going to an office every day and that kind of stuff. My role really is to support John and his team and be the bridge between our financial partners and the people that are operating the business. So it's a model that Arbor has used very successfully in every one of their portfolio companies. They've been very successful in primarily in food and beverage. Steelite's a little bit outside that parameter, but they recognize what a great company it was and the potential for it to grow. And John was very impressed with them, and that deal closed in December of 2020. So we're moving ahead, and like everybody else, running around with our hair on fire right now that the business has come back to life.
I bet, man. Well, first, thank you for your service.
Oh,
and you mentioned what you learned there. You mentioned that it was in the Marine Corps, and in that time, I don't know your exact words, but something that learning kind of what you were capable of, or that you could accomplish bigger things. What was it? I mean, I can guess, but tell me what it was about that experience that taught you so much of who you were.
Well, the thing I always tell people about the Marine Corps, the biggest misnomer about the Marine Corps, and again, I know John Bates is on, he's laughing because John and I had the distinction of not only serving together in the Marine Corps for a very brief time, but getting reunited in the business and working together for a number of years throughout our career. But one of the big misnomers about the Marine Corps is that it operates on blind obedience. That a few people tell a bunch of people, point them in that direction, go do it. It's really not. It's much more collaborative than that. And if you look at kind of the way the Marine Corps is constructed, it's very similar to what you find in corporate America. There's the people that plan the mission, the senior leadership team. There's people that manage the mission, the middle managers, and the people that actually do the work. Yep. But the Marine Corps itself is what taught me the most was that people deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and that everybody's important, and that without all the parts and pieces, the mission's not going to succeed. So, I've applied a lot of that. My very first quote unquote, management training came from going to NCO school in the Marine Corps. It's really kind of the semantics are a little different, but the theory's the same, and it's something that has stuck with me through my entire, business career after the Marine Corps.
Wow. Is it once you're in the Marine Corps, is it something, obviously it's a part of you for life, but is it something that you're still actively engaged in, or, working with them at all in any capacity?
No, I'm engaged in a couple of veterans support groups, cool. Like Wounded Warrior and the Semper Fi Fund, which helps not only wounded Marines, but, wounded service people. And there's a kind of a halt on volunteering now with the VA because of that. But so no, but it's not other than the old adage that once Marine, always a Marine is. People that know me will tell you that you don't have to know me very long to know that I was in the Marine Corps. It's just who I am. So.
I love it. Of all the cool different roles you have on the manufacturing side, regional as a dealer, covering national accounts, being the CEO of, Trimark Strategic, was there a role in particular that was your favorite, that you loved the most, or your current role?
No, not really a favorite. I enjoyed bits and, parts of all of them, but I've also been a proponent of, and have told my kids this probably ad nauseum, that, there's a reason they call it work. So every day is not going to be a holiday, and every meal is not going to be a feast. And there's parts and pieces of things that, I love being a national account guy when I was on the manufacturing side. But there's times when you're a national account guy, you're kind of the lone wolf, and you feel kind of disconnected from everything that's going on. So they all had kind of their ups and downs. The biggest thing, at the risk of sounding like an old geezer, the last few years of my career, the thing I got that I enjoyed the most was watching people that I either had some hand in bringing into the business or had moved them into position in the business, watching them succeed and move into, positions of responsibility. And that's pretty rewarding stuff. That's really kind of the object of the exercise, is to build an organization that has, sustainability and continuity and lasts beyond, the last time you walk out the door.
Yeah, I think that's the legacy story, or the legacy question many ask. What do we leave? And when you get to watch people fulfill things or accomplish things bigger than they believed originally, or watch them have professional success or personal success, that's really, really fulfilling. That's really gratifying, I have to think.
Yeah, and probably the nature of the industry. And I know it's been a frustration at times, and when I talk to a lot of folks about sometimes the level of training is not what it should be. This is kind of a, people get thrown into situations and sink or swim. And I worked for a lot of people like that through the years, and through either luck or, just perseverance, I succeeded in a lot of that. And, but I think that, when you talk about legacy, if nothing else, the thing I got that I felt the best about was when I left Strategic, a number of people went out of their way to tell me, how much they appreciate what I had done for them. I didn't do anything more than put them in the game. I mean, that's my whole thing is that, it's kind of like being the coach. I didn't bat for them, I didn't pitch for them, I didn't field for them. I put them in the game, and they did the rest. And to me, that was, if there's anything really like a legacy to be left, that's what I'd like people to think I did for them.
Well, I think it's awesome. I have a feeling you did a little bit more than that. You were probably a little bit of a cheerleader, and you probably were a great listener and, knew the moments that they needed some extra support probably along the way. But I think the cool thing is that you let them figure it out. It's teaching a person to fish as opposed to fishing for them. When someone figures out that they can do it on their own, what greater gift could we give? You and I have kids. What greater gift could I give my kids than to put them in situations where they can figure out that they can accomplish it on their own? That's where confidence is born, taking a risk and succeeding. And that's where growth comes from. Yeah.
Well, and the part that I left out, again, some people have heard me say a lot, is I left out in the Marine Corps. The thing that common adage was that, the Marine Corps they don't produce managers, they produce leaders. And I always felt like, you manage inanimate resources. You don't really quote unquote manage people. I mean, people should have the ability to manage themselves. You lead them to an end goal, and they find the means or come to you for the means to achieve that. But not a big fan of the whole quote unquote management theory. I did work for a lot of people that micromanaged me, which I'm wildly grateful for. And I don't think while I can be accused of a lot of things, micromanaging is not among them. Except maybe my kids might disagree with that. But
what's of all the qualities of a leader and some of what you experience? I mean, you talk about setting a goal or helping people get in the game. Is there one quality as you look around, as you've led many, that you think stands out the most as being the most significant in leaders that either you followed or that you tried to lead with?
Well, I mean, it's pretty fundamental, but you got to tell the truth. Integrity to me is that without that, you can have every other quality there is, but without integrity, it doesn't mean anything. So you have to be honest with yourself. You have to be honest with the people that you work with. You have to be honest with the people that depend on you for their livelihood. And, there was tough times in 08 and 09, which some of us old timers remember. The industry went through a huge, nothing at all like the pandemic, but strategic, for example, we had to reduce the workforce by like 135 people. And I mean, I felt that pain, and it's a little disingenuous to say I felt that pain. But I felt the burden of telling people that, we were going to take away your livelihood, not because of something you did wrong but because the business couldn't support it. And not long after that, I read an article that was, it stayed in my in-basket for the remainder of my time from 08 until 2020. I still have it around here somewhere in the pile of stuff I brought home with me. It was an article, and I left it in my in-basket, so I never forgot it. It said that layoffs fundamentally are the responsibility or a result of poor management. So I was always very cautious from that point on that we didn't get too far ahead of ourselves and didn't get into a situation where we'd have to go through that horrible process again. So, kind of long roundabout way, but I do think that, integrity trumps everything else. And, you can build on skills and teach techniques and those kind of things, but that's a hard trait to teach. People either have it or they don't.
I was going to ask you that. I mean, I resonate with that. And I mean, I just can't, I'm one of those people that just can't sleep at night if I don't feel like I've got my integrity, but not everybody that's true of. And so I'm wondering, is that something you were born with? Is it something, was there a moment when you were like in 5th grade that you told a lie and you realized, oh my gosh, I just destroyed my mother or something like this? Or did you learn it somewhere? I mean, how did you grow that?
It sounds kind of, like flippant, but one of the places really, if you, particularly now, because it's much more a bigger piece, but when I went to work for Rigo, 100% of what we sold was imported. And supply chain problems then were the same as they are now. And, we had issues with, missing ship dates and those kind of things. And I learned pretty early on that it was easier just to tell the truth and deal with the consequences than it was, to try to, I'm trying to not use the term BS. Try to, but so just be upfront with people. The other thing I've always believed that, in situations like that, bad news is best told early in the conversation. So I don't know that I never really thought about it. I mean, I think that, telling the truth always got me farther than not telling the truth. So, became ingrained.
I'm with you. I think, it's Tony Robbins or something who says, all humans are wired to want to increase their level of happiness and decrease pain. And you're right. I think, as people walk down those, you walk down fine lines of, can I fib a little bit or can I hold off on it? Just ends you up in awkward conversations down the road, which bring more pain, which, create breaks in relationship with customers. It doesn't make sense. Zena, this is awesome. Zena, I love this. Marty was and still is a giant part of my knowledge of the industry. He may not remember, but back in his Oneida days, he drove from Dallas to help do a large presentation on tabletop for a very large country club.
I remember this.
You do?
Gaillardia Country Club, Zena. Yeah. 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 Well, the part that Zena left out was I didn't know about it till Thursday afternoon, and they were doing it on Friday. So I drove home to get the samples and drove back the next day. So, but we did get the business, so that was a good thing. So.
I love it. 25 years ago, I owe a tremendous amount of my success to him. He was an amazing teacher. Zena's, yep. You guys are on the same point. I love it. It's interesting. We talk about teaching. Zena said you're an amazing teacher. There's my background's in teaching. That's what I did prior. You said you spent some time teaching at a college in Texas, correct?
Yeah, I did.
Do you see a lot of connections between teachers and salespeople?
Well, I don't know. I think it might be Zena's being generous now as a teacher. I mean, I walk around with just mountains of minutia in my head, So I feel like if I get rid of some of it once in a while, I might give them the impression that I'm teaching somebody something. But I really like the sales side and the opportunity to kind of work through issues and problems, that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, sometimes the further you go in your career, the farther you get away from the actual transaction and dealing with the customers, that kind of stuff, which was always something that I really enjoyed. You talk about highlights. To me that was the chase and securing the business, and then watching the sales reports come through was always rewarding.
Sure. It's that it does oftentimes seem like it's a more tangible way, more instant gratification of knowing you're succeeding when you see that day in and day out, that actual project, opposed to managing, a team of people, et cetera.
Yep. Exactly.
Is there, Marty, do you have any, we don't all wake up in butterflies and roses every day. Maybe you do. I doubt it. I can't imagine any of us do. What do you have any go-tos in your world when you're just feeling discouraged or you're feeling in a funk? Anything in your world that you do to kind of gets you back set on track or puts you in a better space?
Yeah, I the other thing that people that know me and have known me for any length of time know that I hit the jackpot with my partner in life. My wife is be 45 years this spring. Is one of the very best people, obviously, that I've ever known, and she has a much more balanced view of the world than I do, and has always kept me grounded and really kind of shown me that we have the ability to weather, as we have, a lot of ups and downs and a lot of personal tragedies that happen in our life. Like your wife, she dealt with a very serious health issue, slugged it out, did what she had to do. And, besides being the best person I've ever known, she's also one of the strongest. And so that to me is that kind of what in the years, we talked about, travel and all that kind of stuff. She was always the person I depended on and always knew that, she'd be there to encourage me and soften the blow when things didn't go well.
Man, what do you, I mean, for anyone out there who's married, who's thinking about it, what do you attribute 45 years to? I mean, I
married my prom date. No.
Awesome. I love it. I mean, that's
actually her prom. Yeah. No, listen, I mean, people have heard our story probably more than they want to, but, we just, it was, we were both in the right place at the right time, I guess, so, listen, it's like anything else. It's, a lot of days it's not easy. I mean, I'm certainly a lot easier to live with than people think, but maybe. But we just we have always depended on each other, and just it's the bond gets stronger as we get older.
I think that's pretty awesome, man.
Thank you.
You've worked for a lot of private equity, and there can be a stigma in our industry around private equity and what that's like to work there. What's a challenge from having so much firsthand experience? Is there a challenging thing about it? And what's one thing that's really fun?
Yeah, the part that the stigma part is, and I recognize that, although it's become much more common. There's private equity money in, in the dealer side, obviously with Trimark and Don and a couple of the other, roll-up deals. There's a lot of private equity money in the manufacturing side. There's a ton of private equity in the restaurant companies. I mean, if you look at Rourke Capital owns Arby's and Sonic and Dunkin' Donuts and Focus Brands, and so private equity is just another form of ownership. I mean, it's no big secret. The frustrating part, maybe not frustrating, but the thing that I'm always quick to, people use venture capital and private equity interchangeably, and there's really not really. I wouldn't say remotely, but they're not really comparable. Private equity companies typically, at least the ones that I've been involved with, invest in fundamentally sound businesses that have growth potential, business that can benefit from the access to capital, those kind of things. I mean, Trimark as a whole, Strategic in particular, are textbook cases of businesses that wildly benefited from private equity. The Strategic business alone grew by 3 times in the 7+ years that we were part of Trimark. We opened new distribution centers, had access to capital to do that, opened a new kind of, not really corporate, big regional 250,000 square foot building in Dallas that has both Strategic and a component of R.W. Smith and Trimark's import warehouse in it. All those kind of things would not be possible without that private equity capital. So it's not, like I said, it's not wildly different. The thing that I liked about it is that it's not as tied to quarterly results as it was, for example, when I worked for a publicly traded company. I worked for closely held privately owned companies, and didn't have resources to capital, and didn't really have, we grew organically kind of in fits and starts as we were able to generate the cash to do it. So I don't think that, there's frustrations in that, sometimes you're dealing with people that don't really have, the innate tribal knowledge of the business, and you feel like you're disadvantaged, but I've been very fortunate. I've already told you about Arbor. I've worked for Centerbridge, is the current holder of Strategic or Trimark, one of the largest private equity companies in America. I've been involved with partners that were really sophisticated and really interested in adding value to the business.
Yeah.
And not to say every private equity company is that way, but the ones that I have personally been involved with and have been involved in businesses that I've worked in have been really additive to the business.
That's great. Was it a key when you were getting your MBA? Was private equity huge back then in terms of what they were doing? Were they even coming in? Were they in food service at that point?
No, not that I knew of. I mean, one of the things, I used to say not long after I started at ISI was my only regret was I hadn't found my way to private equity sooner, just because I felt like, and I saw what it was, the possibilities with it. And, the other thing is that maybe the one difficulty with private equity is, and having been through the sale process a number of times, a lot of the folks in the business, they get a little nervous to hear the company's for sale. Is there going to be a big change? Particularly when we sold Strategic to Audex, who owned Trimark at the time, put the two businesses together. We were competitors, fierce competitors, and there were some cultural differences, but those all went away pretty quickly, and everybody saw that that the object was to grow this combined business. And I remember I did a grand tour of the entire company with Jerry Hyman in 5 days. I think we figured out we traveled like close to 6,000 miles and made stops in all the strategic locations. But Jerry said it best. He said, we don't buy broken businesses, and we don't buy businesses to shut them down. And the Trimark story as a whole, not only was strategic, but with all the other Trimark companies that were acquired along the way, it's a great story. And it was all funded with private equity.
Wow, awesome. I can't see who this is, but competitors usually share a mission. Yeah, I think that'd be accurate. I mean, certainly the goal to build businesses, et cetera, and acquire new customers, et cetera. I think that's fair.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, this is, Jason, I mean, particularly that's a pretty small industry, and there, you never know. I mean, I was in the rep business for 3 years during the Arrigo-Oneida transition, primarily because I didn't want to move. And my largest competitor became my business partner. So it's, John Castaldi. So, I mean, it's a business where those kind of things happen, with some regularity. So one thing my father always said to me is never talk bad about your competition. You never know where you're going to wind up or how the business is going to wind up. So I always tried to sell on the basis of what I had to sell and not, sell against the folks I was competing with.
Heck yeah. I think, I don't know a moment that talking negative about someone else has ever really, benefited me in any capacity. I think people appreciate when you just talk up and stay positive about what you've got. And you're right. You never know when your competition becomes your customer or your partner.
I had times when my competition was my brother. So, in some sense, he still is. So, I mean,
talk about. So, Jim's your brother, yes?
He is.
Talk about being in still to this day. Did you guys both get into food service around the same time? I mean, how did you both kind of end up you walk somewhat similar paths? You're both in manufacturers, et cetera.
Yeah. Listen, the folks who know my brother know that he's wildly younger than I am. So, and have nearly as much gray hair. So Jim graduated from college from a food service program from the State University of New York, and wanted to move to Texas. Came to Texas and started working with Arbor. He's 8 years younger than I am. I guess I shouldn't give that away, but anyway, he found his own way. He went to work at for a couple different operators and found his way into the rep business, and then moved into the manufacturing side with Rubbermaid, as a lot of folks know, and then Carlisle, and now is the vice president of sales at Get. So, I mean, a number my son Danny, my youngest son, who's a rep with Preferred Source here in Texas. The irony of that is that Mark Sass and I had a hybrid arrangement. Mark Sass is one of the principals of Preferred Source. Had a hybrid arrangement when I was with Rigo, and he covered the territory in this South Texas as a rep, and I was a company guy in North Texas. So, like I said, very small business. But my middle son Brian has worked at ISI and Strategic now for about 15 years. Is very much involved was on the sales path for a long time, but is now involved in the digital marketing effort. And it kind of, the thing that I told them all is you got to follow your own path. I mean, when Danny worked at TriMark, when he wound up leaving to go to Preferred Source, and people asked me if I was disappointed, and I said, well, he's my kid. I mean, I'm not disappointed. I mean, I'm happy for him. I mean, I'm disappointed for us because we're going to have to find somebody. But I've always tried to be positive. When people come to me and say I have a better opportunity that advances my career and it's good for my family, I mean, I've always wished them well and tried to, support them. I mean, as much as I can, unless they're going to work for a competitor. But, I think that's kind of how you got to find your way. We all happen to work in the same industry, but we're all doing. Here's a clue.
Okay.
Shut your phone off before
Jim
you start.
Probably didn't like the story, so he's calling you to like.
Yeah, no. Actually, it is another one of my siblings, but not my brother. So it's been a great business, and it's provided different opportunities to all four of us.
Did you do you all have a pretty good way of at work is work, and when you come together for the holidays or on weekends for dinner, that you're able to kind of keep it separate?
No, not at all. Not at all. Ask our wives. My wife, my sister-in-law, my daughter-in-law. No. I mean,
they hear about work all the time, huh?
Well, it's not so much work. It's more, a lot of it's anecdotal. A lot of it's, when Danny and Brian were both at TriMark, I got a lot of advice on how we could make the business better. But I still do, as a matter of fact. But it's all. I mean, I'm glad that they're engaged enough and involved enough that they want to talk about it. So, but there's things that you still got to maintain kind of a. I mean, I didn't talk to them in depth about what was going on at TriMark at the executive level because that's not how it's done. So, So when I became the operating partner at Steelite, one of the last people to find that out was Danny. So, but that was purposeful. I mean, that was just, but.
Because Danny's your Steelite rep, correct? Steelite rep.
He is. Yeah. Preferred Source has been the Steelite rep in Dallas now for some time. Yeah. So, yeah. So.
Just hanging out with you for 40 or so minutes so far, it doesn't, my guess, I don't know. You seem like someone who's relatively calm, cool, collected. Like, do you experience stress? Do you experience stress very much?
Yeah, I don't know. Calm, cool, collected is not three adjectives that very often apply to me. But I'm a habitual worrier and always have been. So, and I think what that does is it kind of keeps me, I always have a kind of an ingrained level of stress that I think keeps me from spiking too much. And the other thing is, the reality is, as you get older, you learn to kind of deal with some of that stuff. That it's not, everything's not the end of the world, and everything doesn't deserve to, to throw things around the room. And I mentioned Jerry Hyman before. Jerry Hyman gave me a piece of advice one time when I was at about 10 on the stress meter on a situation with the vendor. And he told me, he said, getting mad is not going to solve anything. He said, you need to find a way that we can work through this, that everybody can win. And I've used that, taking that advice on a number of occasions beyond that. And I've reached a point where I thought, if it's not life threatening or, we're not going to go out of business because of it, then we just deal with it and move on. So, like I said, people ask me that, what's your biggest fault? I always say, I worry. I worry about a lot of stuff that isn't worth worrying about, but not so much anymore. But throughout the course of, the kids growing up and going off to school, all that kind of stuff, the typical parent stuff, and then you add in the work stuff, it kind of keeps me at a constant level of, not an elevated level, just a constant level of stress. So.
I get it. I remember seeing a doctor one time, and she was doing a bunch of lab work in chemical. She goes, "Oh, you live in a constant state of fight or flight." And I thought, I don't know that that's healthy, but I appreciate you diagnosing that, I suppose. Shannon Solomon with Aurora Public Schools is in the house in the K-12 Power Play Network. Yo, Shannon. Josh Callahan is in the house. Yo, homie. What's up, brother? Jim's in the house. I assume that's your brother, Jim. I think so.
I would bet. Yeah.
This is relating to your kind of that constant stress level and not getting too elevated and mad when you got to solve some challenge. Here you completely relate. Good advice. I love it. Someone say, Marty, a win-win is always what I try for. Stinking awesome. I'm going to see if I can see these people again. For some reason, it's giving me a challenge, but let's see. Fingers crossed it's working. Oh, boom, we go. Oh, that was Simon Cox saying it's Jim. Todd Strader's in the house. Jim Kelly. Love it. So many people. Cliff Whitman. Hi, you guys. So glad you're with us. A challenge. I mean, you talked about your military service and how that really put you in positions to learn a little bit more of what you were made of. Any other challenge you overcame in your career that you fought through and really thought, wow, if I can do this, I can maybe do a lot more than I gave myself credit for?
Not really in that vein. I mean, a challenge for me was I had a couple points along the way that I made career decisions based on. It was more than based on just where we wanted to live. It was based on what was best for my family, the principal one was, the folks who United, who were great people, but they were really anxious for me to move to New York when they made me the VP of Sales. Pete Callett, the chairman at the time, great guy, was, felt that it would be, positive for me, positive for the business, all those kind of things. I put it off as long as I could. And finally I walked in one day and said, can't move for a lot of reasons. And it was clearly a big challenge, and it was certainly a, potential risk, relatively speaking, in my career. But, other than that, I mean, without getting into a lot of drama, my wife and I have had a couple of big personal challenges. I mentioned her illness, a couple other things that some folks are aware of that, that there's no way that doesn't have an impact on your professional life, as you well know. But those are kind of things that, you work through with the people that you're closest to. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that in the times that arose, and we're here today, live where we want to live. We'll have lived in Texas 40 years this coming spring. So it was pretty good when we moved from Illinois. We lived down the street from my wife's parents in the street that she grew up on. And I told her, we'll move to Texas for a year. If you don't like it, we'll come home. So she liked it a lot more than I thought she would. So
that's
why we're still here. So.
I love it. Who's this? This is Simon Cox. I think people worry because they care deeply about others. Not a bad trait. I think that can be true.
Yeah, thank you. I do. I mean, one of the things I worked carefully, particularly with implementation of HIP, but there was things that, you really couldn't ask people, but always tried to be empathetic to folks that I knew had challenges in their life going on, their personal life, because inevitably some of those challenges affected their work life. So, I years ago, there was a consultant who's probably still around, Tom Peters, who wrote a very famous book called In Search of Excellence. And he coined a phrase, managing by walking around. And I made a point of doing that. I mean, just because I was interested, maybe probably nosy, but I was interested in how people were doing, how their work life was, and how those kind of things. And it matters to people. So I tell one story. You asked maybe a favorite story about that is my very first job out of the Marine Corps when I worked in the hotel business. I had an Edward Don salesman who's still a legend, been dead for a number of years, Stanley Garland, who called on me. And he was one of the premier Don salesmen of all time, up until that time, probably still is. But I would watch him. He would come in the hotel every Tuesday morning, and he'd come in the back door, and the first person he'd stop and see would be the executive housekeeper. But he would greet every single one of the housekeepers who were lining their carts up, getting ready to deploy to clean the rooms. Stop and speak to every single one he met. He would visit with the chef, say hello to the cooks. He always greeted everyone who crossed his path. And not in a disingenuous, phony way, in a way that really, and it got to the point where people who had nothing at all to do with Stan's success, in generating new business, and then walk by and, one of the housemen walked by, hey, Mr. Garland, how are you? Or hey, Mr. Stan, how are you? And he became part of our business. Yeah. And, for a while I confused that with good salesmanship before I really figured out it was because he really cared about people. And, it was something that, to probably not to as great as extent as he did, unfortunately, but something I always tried to emulate. And, it pays off. People that feel appreciated, hang around, do a good job, and want to be part of the success of the business.
Heck yeah, it absolutely matters. There's a lot of things that go into why someone stays somewhere. Josh talks about this all the time, with our team at Cal Mill or when I was at Desert Peak, but letting people really do want to know you care. They want to know that you have their best interests in mind, them and their families. And so I think that's really wise, not only really wise, but I think it's also creates a level of fulfillment in what we do. I think it was Tony Robbins said, there's a science to success, like success. There's certain things you do to be successful in whatever career, and there's an art to fulfillment. And I think that's a part of the art of fulfillment in our industry and in our career. Who's this? This is Cliff Whitman. Stanley was a great person. I had the opportunity to work with him. He taught me a lot. Love it, Cliff.
He was a fantastic human being. So, you talk about success, Jason. So I'm not a big poetry fan. Not necessarily proud of that, but I just say it, but surprise people. But I saw a quote from Maya Angelou a long time ago where she defined success is liking yourself, liking what you do, and liking how you do it. And that stuck with me, and to the point where, I have these little snippets of things that like taped inside my desk drawer and things that remind me of stuff like that. But it really is, pretty simple definition, but it really helps. It really helps if you like what you do. That's hard to be successful at something you don't like.
What is it that you loved so much about food service? Like, love, whatever. What do you like about what we do?
Well, there was lots I didn't like, but not trying to be glorified. But I can remember when I was in graduate school, I was going to school at night, and Dallas has a huge population of defense contractors. And at the time, they were sending a bunch of folks to graduate school, and I went to class. Kind of a funny story that I went to University of Dallas, which is a fairly small, by comparison, Catholic university, great graduate program. But back then we had classes of 8, 10, 12 people, so you really got to know the cohort group you're with. And we had an instructor one night. He went around the room and, introduce yourself and what do you do? So I was at the very tail end. I was already working for Rigo, and people in front of me saying I work on the HARM missile, or I work for General Dynamics, or I built the B-22 Osprey, and I said I sell China. And the professor looked at me and said, "You sell China?" He said, "Like the company, or like the country?" I said, "No, like the plates." And he looked at me like can you make a living doing that? And I said, you can if you sell a lot of them. And the thing that, it's funny and it's, everybody laughed. And, but the reality was I watched a lot of the folks I went to graduate school with 8-10 years before that, they'd been recruited as the best and brightest people coming out of college. And they were going to school to get an MBA, because they felt like they needed to make a career or, a shift in what they were doing, because for the last 8 years, the companies kept recruiting the best and the brightest. And I just always felt like our business was vibrant and changing and growing. And if you look at it's still the, for all the warts, this is all pre-pandemic, but the largest employer of women and minorities, first-time workers. It's a great story. It's a great industry. There's lots and lots and lots of opportunities to do lots of different things. And, it's, to me, now, it's a very international business, much more sophisticated business than it was, 45 years ago when I showed up. But, I think that the idea that, the business is all about, waiting tables, and not that I, demean that. It's just that there's a lot more to our industry than just what people see outwardly, which is why I've always liked the back of the house. Because that's really what makes the engine go.
I love it. I think a car analogy is kind of a good one. What people see are the waiters and the waitress in the front of the house, and what's happening, the buzz in the front of a restaurant, where there's a whole hood to lift up and a whole big engine that drives all that, not just back of the house in a restaurant, but selling the plates. Wow, you can make a living doing that? Yeah, actually. And all the things that we do. I think that's a big initiative of so many of the what, I don't know if they're still calling them the 5 families, but FIDA and NAFM and MOFSIs, et cetera, is how do we teach these younger kids, these kids in college or in high school and tech programs or whatever, that there's a hood to lift in our industry, and there's so much more than just what you see to actively recruit younger people into our business.
Absolutely. And and there's a lot of demand for bright young folks to come into a business like ours. And, I know a certain level of frustration that, a lot of folks my age are still hanging on, but blocking the path to advancement, as I've been told. But the reality is, like I said, it's a business that continues to expand, again, pre-COVID. It was the second largest industry in America after defense. So
there's something to it.
Right.
Okay, let's leave. I'm going to ask you this question. When we'll get a little insight. I know Danny's watching, probably your kids are watching. When you're giving them advice, and this is going to speak to a lot of the younger people watching right now, who are trying to figure out, they're looking at your story, 45 years in the industry, running some awesome companies, having a great amount of influence in the direction of our industry. And they want to know, what do you tell your kids about succeeding in food service and getting it? Like, what piece of advice do you give them that, everyone else who's young and listening, they can kind of pick your brain and pretend they're in the kitchen with you guys, making waffles on a Sunday morning or something?
Yeah, it's like I said earlier. You got to follow your path. You got to be happy with what you're doing. You got to figure out what's of interest to you and what your passion is, and where that fits in the whole, the overall scheme of things. It's, it's funny you say when you give your kids advice. Think about when the advice your dad gave you or the advice my dad gave me. It was like, okay. Some of that doesn't really resonate until much later, but I think that the thing that I would tell, what I think, what the business is today is, there's got to be, you got to have a much broader understanding of technology. You got to understand how data is collected and how to analyze it, and things that are a lot. Just much more complicated. In the 40 years, okay, this is Grandpa talking here. In my 40-year career, I saw pagers introduced, fax machines, email, horrible introduction, horrible thing. cell phones. I mean, you think about the things the technology that's going to come into play, that's all become everyday stuff to us, that's going to come into play over the next 20, 30, 40 years, everywhere, hasn't even been thought of yet.
Yeah.
But it'll happen. And to me, the thing is, it's just, the one piece of advice is stay as current as you can, never stop learning, and again, always continue to, follow the path that takes you to where you want to get to.
I love it. It's like I'm talking with my dad right now, giving me advice. I don't know if this is true for you and your boys. As I've gotten older and I go to my dad, sometimes he'll give me advice, and sometimes he'll say, I'll give him two scenarios and be like, well, what do you think? Which one would you do? He goes, I'm not telling you. And or he goes, I don't know. And even if I did, I wouldn't tell you, because this is your journey, and you figure it out, and I've got your back, whatever it looks like. And
yeah, well, and I feel that way with my sons. My oldest son of three has a restaurant hotel degree, and when he got out of college, he went to work for a very well-known national chain, who, at least in my opinion, had a reputation of being a pretty tough place to work. They lived up to that reputation, and he, after a couple of years, he had an opportunity with Enterprise Rent-A-Car, of all things. So great company, by the way. I mean, quasi-hospitality business. They love to recruit people out of the hospitality business because they're, bright. They can walk up and talk to people and do all those kind of things. And he kind of came to me kind of hesitantly and said, I'm going to get out of the business. I said, okay. I mean, if that's what you want to do, then, I mean, that's what you need to do. And he was, that's where he said, but you paid for me to get this restaurant hotel degree. And I just was in, not restaurant hotel, but anyways, from Texas Tech. So, whatever the program is, someone out there knows. But again, I mean, I was happy for him that he was following the path that he wanted to be on, and not doing something that he felt like he was doing it just because I'm doing it. And I will tell you, I have seen that particularly in a number of in some legacy businesses, particularly on the dealer side, where the next generation is expected to, step in and take over for dad, who took over for grandpa, and they're not, people aren't, it doesn't always fit. So, yeah. So I mean, I'm happy if they're happy, and if they're fulfilled in what they're doing and moving forward in their career. It doesn't have to be in this business.
I love it. I think there's a degree, and my dad's approach with me was the exact same. He always told me, I became a history teacher first, and he's like, I just want you to go be you, man. You don't need to come take over this. I'm just fine. You do that. And then I think it was fun when I did, but there's an element of when a parent says that to a child, go follow your path, go do you. You don't need to be here. I trust you with your decisions. There's an element of, man, my parent really believes in me. And that instills some confidence, which is different than just, saying, here's what you should do. Here's what I think, whatever. When you say, you know what, you got to go do you. It's like, wow, they really think I can figure this out. And they trust that I'm capable of making solid decisions. And there's some power and value there.
It's funny you say that, because we used to, say it almost as a joke, but, I tell the boys as they were going out, make good choices. But, but it's really true. I mean, it's in a serious vein. It's really about, choosing what you want to be, and then, putting in the time, effort, and energy to make it happen.
Heck yeah. This is, by the way, Larry. Larry says, Jay, tell Marty I said hi. Yo, Pop. This is awesome. Marty, listen, I want to thank you for giving us an hour and so much more than an hour. Just your history, your stories, your legacy. There's so many people just looking on, whether it was in the Facebook group, as I announced you were coming on, or on LinkedIn, who were so excited and had stories about you. Was really overwhelming. And I want to take a minute and just, if it's okay, just read you a couple of people whom you've affected pretty profoundly. And
right, it may not all be true. Okay.
Well, hey, I don't get to say what people send me, but it's I don't know if you saw this one, but it was really fun. And I don't. Anytime I get new guests who you and I haven't known each other well, we hadn't met prior to this. other than talking on the phone a couple of times, but you never know who's connected. And there's so many interconnections we share that we just never know about. So when I posted on LinkedIn, my buddy, Brian O'Rourke, who's the president of Oneida, threw on there, Marty, you've given your entire self to everyone, customers, colleagues, competitors you have been in contact with in this great industry. You've left positive impacts on many, many people in every step throughout the industry. I'm thankful and honored to know you and thankful for your positive impact on me and so many others in the industry. You are the true definition of relationship, friendship, and leadership. Truth in great people you meet along the journey we all enjoy. Cheers to you. How rad.
Brian, that's overwhelming. Thanks to Brian. And I mean, Brian and I go way, way back, which is code for he's as old as I am. I can remember the first time I ever met Brian when he came into my office at Club Corp with Richie Raphael. That would be before some of y'all were born. So let's just leave it at that. So
I love it. I love it. I'm going to summarize some of this. And I had a little inside help. You'll be able to figure it out on your own later at some point. Jerry Dickinson of University of North Texas. You both worked together at Club Corp, correct?
Well, that's a little bit of a stretch. I was the rank and file, and Jerry, when I started Club Corp, was the executive vice president of operations and became the chief operating officer. But Jerry had a huge, huge impact on my career and gave me probably the greatest gift of my professional life when he sent me to graduate school, and Club Corp picked up the tab.
Here's what he said. In 1979, I received a call from Paul Daly, the general manager of the Metropolitan Club in Chicago. Paul, who was great at growing people, told me that he had hired a young ex-Marine as the number 2 purchasing agent at the club. He said he was very smart and I should bring him to Dallas to be in purchasing for Club Corp of America. Marty quickly moved to the top position and built a successful purchasing operation for a rapidly growing company. I encouraged him to get his master's degree in business, and he did. It was obvious quickly he had a lot of potential. He left Club Corp of America to create his own business, and I wished him well in his endeavors. Later, I invited Marty to join UNT organization called the Executives Roundtable, and he joined and became a very active member. I also asked Marty to be an adjunct lecturer at UNT, and he was a great teacher. He also joined the board of governors for our hospitality program as a corporate sponsor and also recruited students. I've long enjoyed my friendship with Marty, and his son Daniel was in 2 of my own classes at UNT. The founder of Club Corp hiring philosophy was this: first, hire the hardworking, bright ones. Second, if you cannot find enough of those, hire the bright, lazy ones, and they will still get the job done, but probably at the last moment. He said you should not hire the hardworking, dumb ones because they will get you more messes and get you in more messes than you can get out of. That was not Marty. Oh, I love it, man. That's awesome.
That was what we lovingly referred to as a Robertism. Robert Dedman, the founder of Club Corp. That was don't ever hire the dumb ones.
That's so good. Okay, this was a fun one. Your brother Jim, who's I think is on here tonight from GET or Get. Here's what he had to say about his big brother, 8 years older, allegedly. It's hard to put into a few words the positive impact that my brother Marty has had on my life and career, but I'm going to try. Marty is 8 years older than me. We have 4 sisters, and I was the youngest of 6 kids. When I was growing up, he was the cool big brother that always made time to teach me things. That teaching theme keeps coming up for you, Marty. When I was young, he taught me many things: how to ride a bike, how to swim, how to skate, play basketball, and shoot pool. When I was 10, Marty enlisted in the Marines. It was very hard when he would leave, but he would always stay connected, writing letters, sending souvenirs from his travels around the world, including a big box of fireworks that he mailed to me from Taiwan when I was 12.
That probably wasn't a good thing.
Throughout my life, he's always been there for me and our family. I could always count on whatever advice he gave me was not just only right, but it was also the right thing to do. In 1989, he'd been in food service operations for 6 years when he introduced me to our side of the business, and he was always there to help with guidance and advice. 32 years later, I'm still loving what I do. I'll always be thankful for that, and also realize there's a responsibility to being his brother. I've lost track of the amount of times I've been asked, Marty is your brother? He also has 2 sons in the industry now, and I'm often asked, are you Brian's uncle? Is Danny your nephew? Yes. I'm blessed to be in an industry where many of my customers, colleagues, and competitors have become great friends. They also have family in the same industry. To also have family in the same industry is icing on the cake. Marty and his beautiful bride, Margaret, have been married 44 years, are the epitome of a perfect couple with a deep faith and love for their family. They've raised 4 awesome kids and are the proud grandparents of 9 grandkids. To sum it all up, Marty is not only the best husband, father, papa, brother, friend, and uncle I know, he is also the best man that I know. Man, I love your family.
Wow. Wow. Full disclosure, and not only my brother, but my best friend. So, yeah.
You guys are lucky. I love it.
You tell me this was going to be part of it, you know?
I get you at the end. I sneak it up on you. Yeah. I totally get you. Here's the last one. This is from someone you know pretty well, becoming a friend of mine. His name's Danny. He's your boy. My dad has been a confidant, mentor, and a friend to so many in the food service industry. He would tell you that the best relationships are built on trust. His career and success is a testament to the trust his partners, peers, and employees placed on him, and that he earned through his steadfast commitment to doing right by people he worked for and those who worked for him. He is an incredibly rare mix of business acumen and personality that make him one of the most dynamic people ever in food service.
Oh.
Having held roles in sales, operations, in the C-suite, his ability to relate to people across multiple disciplines is a hallmark of his success. He accomplished all of this while being an incredibly loving and dedicated husband, father, and now grandfather of 9 to his family, which we are most proud and grateful for.
Wow. Not often I don't have much to say. So.
It's all right. You don't need to say anything. Here's what I would say to you. Thank you. I think is what a lot of your industry colleagues and people watching tonight would say. It's evident that the way you've done it, I think Danny said it, you've done right by a lot of people. You made it a part of your mission to lift people up along the way, to be good to them, to tell them the truth. That came out numerous times tonight. And so many have learned from you, and now we're carrying on those insights and morals and ethics along the way, are carrying that in the way they do business around the country and I'm sure the world. And because of that, you know, your legacy is huge, Marty, and we're grateful for you and people like you who do it the right way. For some of us in the younger generation who are growing up to say, you know what, this is the way, this is the model, this is the way to do it right. And so thanks for doing it right.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And thanks to everybody for your really kind words and for helping me have such a great career along the way.
I think it's not done in isolation. It's always done in relationship and community. Love it, Jim, Zena. Thank you. I can't see who everybody is, but you are, wait for it, amazing. Boom. Love it. Gail Swain, our friend from Cambro. Yo, Gail, thank you for the inspiring story and words. Love it. David Maxwell, thank you. Good night, Dave. Good night, my friend. Some happy tears. Wow. Well said, Jim. Listen, for everyone who's watching, I hope you got some great notes. I hope you got some nuggets of wisdom as you're continuing on in your career from Marty and the legacy that he continues to leave. I learned a lot about what can be accomplished while you live with a fair amount of worry, a perpetual worrier, I think Marty said he was, which I can relate to on a significant level. And I love to see all that he's accomplished in that place and the ways he's continued to serve the industry from it. So take something tonight. All of you who've watched and shared, thank you for your comments, your questions, your feedback. I love it. And I would say whatever resonated tonight, apply it tonight or tomorrow. Within 15 minutes of this ending, I don't know what it is, but maybe make a sticky note on your computer or in your office. Maybe you need to reach out to someone. Maybe you need to tell the truth to someone if you've been holding back on something. Maybe let it come out. Use it instantaneously, immediately. That's how action happens. That's why anytime you learn something, I've always heard you want to use it in the first 10 or 15 minutes to start applying it and making it real in your life. To all of our friends who are watching and in a rut right now, know that Marty and I both go through ruts, right? It happens. There's things that we lean on. Marty's got his beautiful bride and his family and this legacy of stories and relationships that he can connect with and lean on in those moments. Same is true of me. Same is true of you. Your job is to keep going. If you're in a tough spot right now, this isn't the end of your journey. It's important to realize that. Look at Marty's career, some cool places he's been, building things, being a part of something special. And at some point, he realized it was time for something new. I don't know if that's true in your journey right now, but it might be. Your job is to keep going. Recognize that you are stronger than you realize. You're capable of more than you know. And you might keep asking and looking for those moments. Remember, we don't love challenge in the moment, but those are the moments like Marty and the Marines, or with health stuff in their family, or having to go into a company and say, I'm not moving, where you learn what you're made of and you take risks, you overcome them, and that's where your confidence is built. So keep looking for those. We'll be back next week. Foodservice Power Plant. We're doing it together. You've got this. We're grateful to be in this community together. Keep going. Marty, thanks again, my friend.
Thank you all. Really appreciate it, Jason. Thanks.
You got it, brother. Have a great night, everybody. Lots of love.